if you have a man that has integrity, you have gold. In a world where people try to cut corners, where people try to cut the floor from under people.
Definitely. I think it's about, recognizing that you are not perfect and you are not a robot, and neither is the other individual robot. And so don't expect
we have to be able to express ourselves. And that's one thing we haven't been taught as women, that we can actually not only, with regards to sex, with everything, we have to.
Welcome back to Pink Room XP, and we say that the XP stands for exposure. And today we want to talk about women in relationships. Women in relation. I know this is like, whoa, women in relationships. So we want to start by sharing with you little Instagram clip. Again, we're using social media to pull wisdom from it and not just to mindlessly scroll. Why do women regret losing guys after they lose them, right? So this happens regularly, believe it or not. And we're sharing Samantha Lee, we're sharing her little clip on why women regret losing this particular type of guy. Let's listen to her.
Here are 8 different types of situations where women either regret leaving or losing this type of guy. Y'all ready? Let's get into it, family. Number 1, a man they started to take for granted. They started focusing more on what he wasn't doing versus what he was. Number 2, a man who was willing to put in the work to fix the relationship. He was willing to compromise. Number 3, a man who had made some mistakes, wasn't perfect, and they thought they could find perfection elsewhere. The joke's on you. Number 4, a man who was more of an asset than a liability. The positive definitely outweighed the negatives. Number 5, a man with integrity and character. Can't buy that. Number 6, a man who was stable, protects and provides, but wasn't exciting. Number 7, a man they didn't know how to forgive in the moment. Number 8, a man that truly held them accountable for their actions. When a man knows his worth and he's a quality man and you've hurt him in a certain way, ladies, it's hard to come back from that. And this type of guy is rare. So hold on to him, cherish him, because once he's gone for good.
What are your thoughts about what she had to say? It's so power packed, but I think
it's like every point is a pink room. Point.
Yeah.
I guess since I'm already talking, I just want to say, where the point where she says, that they were expecting perfection, and then she's, oh, what did she say? Joke's on you or something like that? Like,
joke's on you.
Joke's on you. That's what she said. I want to start there because I think that was the most impactful for me. I think that I came into every relationship that I've had, so many of them, but with a man, and even I think even with my friends, but in this case we're speaking about that romantic relationship. I came into them expecting perfection. I mean, I really did. I think it was informed by what I watched on TV, what I dreamed about because I didn't have at home, right? I didn't have a father figure at home. It was just, there was, I had a lot of need to find something better. But for me, what better was perfection. So I guess for me, I'd like to start there, where it is the most ridiculous and unhuman idea to think that you're going to find somebody that is perfect. There's no perfect ever. There's no perfect for you ever either, because that would be ridiculous. That would mean that person was exclusively designed for you, which is not true. That person could be happy with whoever they decide to be happy with, right? I really think that understanding, well, one, that I am not perfect. And, I say this, with a smile on my face, because when I'm like in front of a group of students teaching, we'll talk about, expectations and assignments and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, I understand nobody's perfect. And I tell them, I come pretty close, but, I'm not perfect. Right. And, even though I would joke with that, I think that the reality, and if I'm being very honest, is that I would see myself, and maybe not in a way of like that I would say to myself, I am so perfect, but I acted like if I was. I would act like, hey, by judging other human beings in a way that, and having super high expectations for everybody around me, really fed into this, like, people need to be more like me. They need to think like I do. They need to do the things that the way I want them done. And when it comes to a romantic relationship, I had super high expectations for the males. Like, I've had two marriages. The first one ended with my husband passing away from cancer. And I can just tell you, it was just like a constant expectation of perfection for that man. And there's no way he was gonna come up to it. That of course ended because he passed away. And I had to, like, really reevaluate a lot of um my views of other human beings, right? And of what a relationship should be like.
Yeah.
I like that point too that she brought out also, Teresa. And I think of it as like the trappings of power, right? And guess what? No one is a robot,
Mm-mm.
right? Because even robots fall apart. And so when we're talking about relationship, you're not looking at someone who you can plug them and charge them up when you want, take it out, press some remotes, press some controls, and that goes for both men and women, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's the trappings of power, because when you're able to do that, that's dominating, right? And then we
Controlling.
fall
Yeah,
right and
yeah, yeah.
controlling, absolutely, and we fall right back into these oppressive societal ills that are, placed in the world. So definitely, I think it's about, recognizing that you are not perfect and you are not a robot, and neither is the other individual robot. And so don't expect that, right? You have to know that there are going to be flaws, because even like I said, a robot eventually breaks down, right? And
Right.
then you have to repair it. So
Can
yeah.
can I add on to what you just said, Shonda? I think and I speak for myself, and the years of therapy that I've been able to, thank God, have that I've had. Um, when you have been hurt, when you have been traumatized as a child, then you grow up into a person, and this is, psychology. This is not me saying it. That majority of women who have gone through, like, the big T of traumatic experiences in their lives, um, become very controlling. And I know that I saw that in my life, right? I needed to control everything. And so I didn't want to get hurt. So that means you need to behave for me so
Wow.
I won't get hurt. You need to behave for me. And that started with my husband, and continued with my children.
Wow.
After my first husband died, my second husband, Victor, it was the same thing. When we got married, I was vegetarian. I expected him to become vegetarian, of course, because, yeah. Is your mouth dropping right now? Anyway,
Yes.
I didn't watch TV, and I didn't let my kids watch TV. My two girls. So I had all these little, things, that because I wanted my life to be perfect, right? I wanted it to have this, there's this thing that I wanted in my life, and it had to be like that. He made this song, hilarious, right? He said, how we used to have the Taliban, right? Like back in the early 2000s, like the Taliban was they were on the news all the time and everything. So he said, in the land of the Terry band, Terry as in me, Teresa, right? They wouldn't let you do this, and they wouldn't let you do that. Like, he kept going, like, and it was hilarious, right? But at first I was, like, of course, offended by it. But it was, now I think back, I'm like, that was like his way of saying, hey,
Help me.
this
Help
is a little much. This is a
Yeah.
little much,
Help
right?
me.
And it was, anyway, 23 years later, I just cannot thank God enough for. I've learned that there's no perfection, and that's like the most beautiful place
Mm,
to be.
wow.
Where you understand that your imperfection meets another human being's imperfection, and you can still appreciate each other, and you can still work and grow with each other. That's like, yeah, that's
Wow.
so that's that's why I was so hung up on that,
Yeah.
imperfection, because I know personally it's a big deal. Like, to me, it was, that's who I was, and I was ready to just, go from one relationship to another, looking for my, perfect man.
I love the connection you make between trauma and
Yeah,
preparation. I never thought about it that way, but it makes definite sense.
yeah,
For me, it was what she said. Two things she said. One about stability. I'm not going to go into it, not to take up time, but the one about integrity.
Mm.
Uh, if you have a man that has integrity, you have gold. In a world where people try to cut corners, where people try to cut the floor from under people, where people
Mm.
are backstabbing, where people are saying something and doing something else, where there's a lack of values, if you find a man that has integrity, hold on,
Yep.
right? Hold on. I think that for me, that to me, I can work with anything else, any other bad habit, whatever you have, but you have integrity, I'm good, right?
Non-negotiable, right?
Right. That's one of my non-negotiables because I believe that if you have integrity, you're going to guide well. You're going to speak truth. You're going to be genuine. You're going to show up with values, and I'm not going to have to say to you, hey, that was wrong. Like, you can't live that kind of life, right?
Yeah.
So, for me, that spoke a lot. I definitely applaud her for breaking it down that way. But I wanted to ask us this question. What is the one thing that we feel that women are not taught about relationships, and we go into relationship blinded, right? Because we're either deluded by what we see on TV and movies, or what is told to us and sold to us about relationships. What is the one thing that we do not know about relationships? We go in, and then there's this huge letdown. It's like, oh my goodness, I thought it was going to be this way.
I think the one thing a lot of women are not taught in relationships and going into relationships is that there's this level of um, what you have to tolerate, that you have to, that it's so high
Mm,
that you can just keep on feeling that, feeling it, and then eventually, no, you need to know that. And I think that in the previous video, like setting standards and boundaries, that's, you are still an individual. Yes, you're trying to come together as, you are partners or in a relationship, but that false notion that there's this extremely high level of tolerance, I think a lot of women are not taught that. That's a falsehood. That's a myth.
Mm. To add on to what you just shared, Shonda, I think that I think in the past that was very common, right? That women were observing from the relationships that their mothers were in, that they had to take a lot of the things, right? They just had, because they were supported financially, socially, they were connected to this man, and that's all they that they could aspire to, is just make sure that whatever happened in the relationship, that they could take it. My point that I want to make, I think one of the things that we're not taught is that we can ask for what we want in a relationship. When I was growing
Yes.
up, you needed to be quiet. You couldn't talk. You couldn't express yourself. You couldn't. Sure, that not everybody grew up like that, but I know a lot of people, unfortunately, grew up where you're not supposed to show how you feel, stop crying, and be quiet, because children were supposed to be seen and not heard. And I think that was one of the things that really damaged a lot of our relationships as adults, because you're quiet, right? What happens? Dr. I believe his name is, and he has that, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And one of them is stonewalling, where you just quiet, you just don't talk to the person, right? And it's like, that's one thing we need to be taught, that we can express our emotions and our feelings. Of course, hopefully, with vocabulary that you've acquired in a healthy way, in a way that's not like judgmental or deemed as as an attack, but as saying, hey, look, this is how I feel, right? And I think that if we are to have relationships that are healthy, we have to be able to express ourselves. And that's one thing we haven't been taught as women, that we can actually not only, with regards to sex, with everything, because, I think I've heard this more when it comes to like sex. Hey, you have to tell, your partner what you like, what you don't like, and that's good. I think that's healthy, right? But I do believe that this is something we should just use across the board. In right now, social media, movies and all that, is that men, if they really love you, they have to, your partner has to know what you're thinking, and that is like the most ridiculous, and like that's the falsest thing from
Yeah.
there's like it's just totally
Yeah.
absurd.
Totally.
It's illogical. There's no reasoning behind that. You need to tell someone what you're thinking. If you want flowers, if you don't want flowers, you need to tell,
That's right.
because they do not read minds.
That's right.
Period. And I think that those are the things that we're not taught as women, but we see it we see it in the media, right? We see it in our movies, and if he loves you, he's gonna know, he's gonna figure out. No,
Right.
that's like the biggest lie that
Right.
women are told. We're not taught
Good
to
point.
speak. We're not taught to speak, and we're and to say what we want. If you want something,
That
Yes.
is exactly it. For me, I would like to add to what has been said before, that we have created a culture about falling in love. There's a lot up to when the ring and the wedding,
yes,
but after that, how to stay in love doesn't exist,
Mhm.
right? And I think basically what Sean and Theresa here are saying is, in order to stay in love, these are some of the things that you need to know, right? How do we stay in love? Nobody tells us that. We feel like you get the ring, you have the beautiful wedding, and that's it. They live happily ever after. Well, that is not true. You have to
Nope.
work at that staying in love, right? And it requires
Mhm.
two of you. But in the interest of time, I want to show the next video that we have for you.
can I, before you show that video, can
Go
you
ahead.
just let me include this part
Sure.
where she talks about it being boring, like he's
Yes,
boring.
that's stability. Yes,
Mercy, I
that's
just want to
stability
say
part. Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that as women we because of what's sold to us, they sell us in the media,
Mm-hmm.
that love is really about these passionate, hot sex, all this other stuff. And really, I heard somebody say this, as somebody who I can't name right now because I can't remember. Thank you, ADHD. Who, that said, "Hey, love is actually boring. Love, true, like real love is actually boring because it is something you can trust. It is something, and I thought that was like, that's so fascinating, that concept, because it means that you're in a peaceful place, and that was just mind blowing to me, right?
Yeah.
If you really have love, peace in a relationship, right? You have it, and that is something that I think, because of what we've been taught, what we've subliminally been, all these messages that we get, right, from society and social media and all that, is that a relationship has to have so much drama and all this other stuff, and
Right.
and really, that's not
Mhm.
what love is. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of talk
Right.
about
And
that
she
point.
uses the word connected to that concept, Teresa. She uses the word stability.
Mm,
Yes.
Stability.
you're right. Yes.
We
Yeah.
need to see love as stability. And
Yeah.
that's the problem.
Yes.
It's all of this, whatever. So we're gonna show this. This is our second video for this take. And this is from Margarita
I
Nazarene.
did a list of 3 things that men need in a long-term relationship, and I'm going to do one for women now. So if you want to send this to your boyfriend, go ahead. Boys, the thing that women need to feel happy in a long-term relationship are the following. She needs to feel safe. She needs to feel safe that you don't lie, that you are where you are, that you can look after her if shit hits the fan. Even if she can provide for herself, she needs to know that you will if she can't. She needs to feel safe with your trust, knowing that you will always be there for her emotionally and physically. So she needs to feel safe. That's big number 1. Number 2, she needs to feel valued, aka appreciated. Matters on your language, how you use it. But she needs to know that you value her and see her and appreciate the things she does. That's thing number 2. And lastly, thing number 3, a woman wants for a long-term relationship is to feel intimate and close. You need to be the person who knows her. You need to have an intimacy with her. You need to she's to feel that you want to hear her mind. She needs to be able to vent to you and for you to not try and fix it, but to have that intimate you and her against the world, not necessarily against, but in one boat, working together, feeling. So to feel close, to feel safe, and to feel valued.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, Paula.
Wow.
Like, duh.
I know. Yeah. Anyone wants to
I
take?
think she should get paid for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a nutshell.
Absolutely. I like that what she mentioned here, this idea of as a woman, the third one that she said, she talked about safety, she talked about value, and then she talked about intimacy and closeness. And one of the things that I always advocate or always say is that we have been so socialized to only see physical nakedness as the key to draw
Mhm.
a relationship together. And we have not been taught to look at emotional nakedness,
Mhm.
where I can be fully myself with you. I can be vulnerable with you. I can tell you everything, and that will serve as the glue to draw us together. We have not been taught. We're still hiding. We're in relationships, but we're still hiding. And that emotional nakedness will lead to that close intimacy, because there's this person in the world where you and him are together tight, right?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
it's Shonda and Teresa.
Ooh, there's this couple that I know that use this phrase for their relationship. They say that they're their ride or die,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
And I didn't understand it at first.
Yeah, this is a black phrase.
Yeah. Um,
So Shonda, correct me if I'm wrong. When I hear ride or die, it's this person that is with you in the good times, the bad times, and it will stick with you on that ride until death.
Absolutely. That's it right there.
okay, great. So this is something that they repeat to themselves, right? And I didn't quite understand it because I guess I personally I grew up thinking I will be in a relationship, but if you wrong me, we're done, right? We're done, right? Yeah, you have a shelf life here. And to understand this concept of ride or die, I think that it has to do with what our previous video was saying. You know, as human beings, we make mistakes, and I'm not talking about abusive relationships, and I want to make that a disclaimer right there. I'm not talking about relationships that are toxic and that are. I'm talking about human beings who make mistakes, right? And because we do, I know that there's been times in this, human nakedness that that the soul being naked is, I think, one of the most vulnerable places that we are as human beings, right? And so to have someone to accept you in that nakedness, to have somebody see you and say, okay, that ugliness
Mhm.
okay with me because there's other things about you it's not only this ugliness that I'm seeing, right? And I think that all of us have that ugliness, all of us. I mean, there's nobody who can say I'm just such a enlightened being that there's nothing evil about me, there's nothing difficult about me, there's nothing wrong with me, right? We all have these areas. Hopefully some as we become better human beings, there are less and less, right? But to have someone to say, even though when you're there in that ugly part of who you are as a person, I'm still with you.
I like the piece that she emphasized, like certain values, like that safety, that trust, that security. It just stood out to be real powerful to me because those are things that are so, I don't want to put them in that cliche term like a safe space, but that's really what it is. That those trust, those values, especially with this person who's supposed to be, and I'll use your term, Teresa, that ride or die.
Mhm.
You want to be able to have that. So those values were just so key, and to have those, the value, both respecting those values and having those values in relationships, that sets a tone. That's
Hmm.
that's a lot. That includes the intimacy from all levels. That includes just a host of things. Those particular key values extremely are of extreme importance.
Mhm.
Absolutely, son.
I want us to go to damage control. How do we repair? Because there's a lot of, and Teresa, you're right. There's a lot of misguided information out there about relationships, right? And it's not only social media; it's also even in places as a church. It's in schools. It's in colleges. There's a lot of misguided information about relationships, and maybe that's the reason why so many relationships stank and fail. How do we repair the damage? How do we then revisit and shift our views and ideas about relationships?
We begin by having these conversations, and you know, I I want to say, like I, with the first point that I made, that we you asked, what haven't we been taught? And I said, that we can speak up, right? And I think that one of the things that we can do is make sure that we allow the next generations to speak up, because I think that because we were taught not to speak up, um, I think this is why we do some of these things that we're doing now, because we're like, hey, we were taught not to speak in the past, but we have a voice and we're going to use it, right? And but we also have to make sure that we are training the next generations, be it our students, our the children in our families, anybody, let them speak, right? And sometimes we will not like what they say, but we still have to let them have their say. And I was listening to Bill Mayer, and are you familiar with him? So he's out of here, California. I don't prescribe to many of his ideas, but I do think that many of the conversations that he has with other individuals that have something to say are very, very valuable. And one of the individuals that he was speaking with this weekend was with Dr. Phil. So he had him on there, and there was a question for Dr. Phil that said, so, what do you think about the increased popularity of polyamory? And I'm going to get to the point now. After he gives his answer, he says, no, it's crazy. It's just, and he gets pushback from Bill Mayer, who's like, what, just because you don't, do it or whatever, right? And why do you impose yourself on other people? He was like attacking Dr. Phil. And Dr. Phil said, no, it's not. I haven't tried it. I don't, but it's really, it's ridiculous. In relationships, people themselves, just like with one other person, they struggle to actually find the intimacy and the satisfaction in one relationship. Opening it up is crazy. And so he still kept getting this pushback from Bill. And he says, well, that's your opinion. He says, no, it's not my opinion. We have statistics on that. And that, I think, to me, it's like, those are the conversations that we need to be having. There's so much in social media, like people thinking, oh, let's try other things because this hasn't worked. Well, it hasn't worked because we haven't worked at it, right? As you said, Orca, there is work to be done there. And most of the work is actually on a very personal level, because I know that the more work I put into myself, the better person I am to present to everybody around me. And that just reflects in healthier relationships.
All right. So I wanted to add that for me, and I think I'm taking a little bit from all that you said, Teresa, the idea of working at relationships. Chanda?
I think that, Teresa, you brought up a good point that it requires work, right, in relationships, and that's how you repair. But then you also may want to consider too that take away those negative energy zappers. If you acknowledge them and can recognize them, those things that just sap your energy. And again, it does work. It has to start with you, because it's you who may have these notions and perceptions about certain things that spill in, and they become sort of like those negative energy zappers versus the positive, which fills the relationships, right? So I think that just trying to eliminate those zappers, that's a part of the repair, right? Removing those.
I feel that idea of the work, and the three of us are zeroing into that. We have a generation that doesn't want to do work. They say to you, why does everything have to be so difficult? Why can't, and a lot of it is because of technology. Everything is at the click of a button. Click here, it appears. Click there, it disappears. So why am I expected to do work in a relationship, right? And I've heard young women like, well, I don't want to do any work. It needs to be, if I have to do any work or anything, then I'm out, right? And I love what you said, Teresa. The work actually begins with yourself. You have to start doing the work. So when we talk about repairing and doing damage control, I want to suggest here that we need to be open as women to unlearn, and we need to be willing to grow.
Yes.
We need to look at who our models are and really dig deep into, is this really what I want for my life? And what are the end goals of this person or this idea or this concept or this practice or this thing that I believe should be in relationships? Is the end goal that we're both going to be better because of this? Is this going to add joy to the relationship? If not, then you need to unlearn that and redo things. And I think that the idea of unlearning and giving ourselves the opportunity to grow is one way of trying to repair relationships, because it's so lacking. People think it works by osmosis. You got married, you have kids, and then that's it. There is so much that has to go into that. And we need to be willing to do the work. Starting
And if I just add this to what you just said right now about the younger generations not wanting to do the work, it's painful.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
It's not easy to look inside yourself and see those areas that are not very social media friendly, that those difficult parts of who you are as a person, and to really address them, and to understand that you need to make changes. And as the great Mohandas Gandhi said, it starts here. It starts with me. This is where but it is not easy, and that's why we are like, hey, no, I don't want to have to deal with that. They have to do the work. Or they have to come to me
ready.
The way I want them, right? Ready. That's never going to happen. I think that's a fantasy. Thank you for letting me cut into your segment there, but go ahead.
Again, I think this was a very rich conversation. I believe that hopefully we're able to reevaluate the way we do things, the way things have been. Okay, Shonda, could you jump in with your part that we kind of lost?
Yeah.
I don't recall where we lost, but I was just talking about those energy zappers that just are fillers. They take away from the work, the energy that you really need to put into enhancing those relationships. And so that was my takeaway in terms of repairing and knowing that it's important, but it does start with you. You have to recognize that those are things, and as I heard you saying, Norca, you have to unlearn those things, and it requires work, right? It's not this instant gratification, like you said, the ring, the wedding, and boom, everything is lovely, right? There's so much more. It's gratification from both ends.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sean and Teresa, once again. This has been a very enlightening and deep conversations. We invite everyone to watch the other clips from Pink Room Exposure. We are intending to have the conversations, to do the deeper work, because this is deeper work, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Do the deeper work, to come before you and present and have the conversation and listen to each other carefully and learn from each other. And we hope that you are also doing the same, and you're joining us on this journey of exposing those things around us that we need to really take a careful look at. But more importantly, what can we learn and how can we grow from it? Thank you so much, Sean and Teresa. Have a good one.
You too.